general public. We also will potentially have some folks at home. We're able to kick off our meeting now. We're trying to make sure that our connection for the screen here was actually working, was the issue we're having at the moment, due to some of the change of some equipment that we got. So at any rate, that's now resolved, we hope. And so folks in the room at home can still see the plans. I think they're relevant for tonight's discussion. So with that, for the chair.
Vice Chair, let's just make sure I understand that. Susan's not with us tonight. First thing I'd like to do, welcome everybody. This is the meeting of the planning board, December 3rd, 2025. First item is a roll call. Paul
Here.
Here. Jamie Pennington.
Here.
Ryan Malcolm.
Here.
Here. And Jack. Here. Kelly Palmisano here. The applicant for 23 Rose Street has requested
Yeah, I muted it.
December 17th. We have a motion.
I will move to postpone the application for 23 Rose Street. December 17th, 2025.
Second. And a vote. All everybody. We can do raise a hand because of. And that is unanimous. All right, next matter on the agenda is Caswell Development, 18 Highland Avenue. Is the applicant here?
Is that, oh,
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah.
Here we go.
Okay.
John, my name is Jake Allen, Development, 18 Highland Ave. What we do? Can you speak up?
Yeah, speak up.
My name is Jake Allen, Development, I'm here in Highland Ave, Newburyport. Here with me is Shane Ford, my partner on the project, and Steve Sawyer, the engineer of record. So, a little rundown of 18 Highland, it would be where it's at now. A little while back, he had come to me with 18 Highland Ave, that I had real notes from the building and everything else for you around here for years. Shane had come to me with this project, and he said, what do you think about potentially developing this? So I look at it. Honestly, why would you do this? I mean, it's an established building. It's been like this forever. Trying to explain to them, listen, real estate development is a risky proposition. Nothing's guaranteed. You have an asset here that has income, and you're gonna get zero income, you're just gonna spend a lot of money to take it. And then you fill me in with Beth Israel Deaconess, which is the building holds 3 tenants. Acupuncturist, a pediatrician, and Beth Israel Deaconess. Beth Israel is moving out, they're not gonna redo their lease, so they've got to be vacating the building. So you guys are familiar with the building at all? It's an old structure. It's an existing non-conformity. It was changed in late 70s, early 80s, become medical. And over the years, it's been on the top of it. Same tenants been there. So in terms of this tenant leaving to go on somewhere else, what happens is it leaves a major vacancy in the building, and then the building's no longer it is today. The reason why the tenant's probably leaving is because it's vertical, it's not building. So in that, we said, okay, what do we do? So we analyze the project. What's the best use for this? If it can't be this anymore. So we go down the road, oh, we can do high density this, we can do that. But the reality of the situation is we take account the area of town it's in and everything else. We came to the realization the best possible use for this would be is a nice, well done, 4-unit subdivision. And that's where we end up with the plan. So that's kind of just the runaround of how we got here. We're obviously gonna be open up to questions and everything else later, but with that,
I'm happy to flip through, the slides, so everybody.
Yeah. Steve's gonna like.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pop, yeah.
Okay.
So with that said, I'm gonna turn it over to Steve and he's gonna give you guys all of the engineering stuff. Thank you.
Good evening, Steve Sawyer from Millennium Engineering. Okay, the first slide here is the overall project area. You can see the project location outlined in yellow. You can see on the northwest side, it's a sort of a sawtooth type property line cut in with different lots abutting to the northwest from Arlington Street. And then funny a little spur off the east side towards High Street and a straight property line running along the southeast side up back up to Highland. You can see the parking lot. There's a large paved parking lot, highly utilized now while the building's full. Currently, I believe it's 168 based on the ITE. It's about 168 daily trips for this use. So with this, the new use will be substantially reducing the vehicle traffic at this site with residential use. I believe the 4 units would produce a total daily trip volume of about 38 trips a day. So basically a substantial fraction of what the current traffic volume of the commercial use of medical office use transitioning just to the 4 residential units. All right, Amy, the next slide, please. So you can see here, this is just zoomed in a little bit. The medical building up front that's been cobbled together will be removed. You can see that. Then the paving to the rear will be removed. And then you can see to the left, I believe it's 20 Highland. There's a driveway that currently utilizes the site driveway for the parking for their access. You'll see later that how we've addressed that, providing its own their own driveway out to Highland Ave. Okay, the next slide, please. This it's a little hard to see on the screen here. If you can zoom in at all. This shows the overall development superimposed over an aerial image. So you can see in yellow outline, it would be the new lane running along the south property line with a hammerhead turnaround. And then on the left, you can see the four single family dwellings along the roadway with a hammerhead at the very end of the road. The second lot, we're showing a potential for an ADU to the rear, as that's allowed in zoning. I'm not sure if that would be built, but there would be a potential for it. One thing of note, you can see in the faded red, that's the existing footprint of the existing parking. So you can see that the three of the new homes will be basically located within that paved parking area. And not disturbing any additional land, at least for the structures. Of course, behind the area, the rear area would be utilized for the rear backyards, which would be patios and lawn area. And then the last house is in the sort of scrub treat area at the very end of the property, would be the 4th house location. All right, and then also you can see in the yellow for 20 Highland, you can see the driveway access, the standalone driveway access for that, maintaining access to that building. So it would be fully separated from the lane serving the new 4 new buildings. Next slide, please. Here's the existing conditions plan, just a standard existing conditions plan, showing the building, the parking, 2 handicap spots, basically kind of right up on Highland Ave. You can see as you enter the site, it slopes downward to the parking in the rear, with the commercial parking. You can see the existing tree and shrub line around the building. One thing of note, I think there would be a butter at it was 16 Highland, was questioning why we didn't hold the iron rod at that corner. You can see the shed. There's an iron rod shown there. We spoke of the survey, and they don't always hold iron rods that we held the one at the corner, the bend, but he had actually, I think he had sent a survey that, he had done for his property. I believe it was GA Associates, and we looked at that versus this survey, and it pretty much, like, that property line's pretty much identical. GA Associates indicated the fence line. I'm not sure if it's 16s or if it's 18s. That fence line behind the shed encroaching into the property, it just didn't show the iron rod. But the fence line in relation to that property line is pretty much identical. So there is consistency between that survey and our survey. Next slide, please. All right, now here's the definitive subdivision plan. So as part of the courts and lanes, the intent of the courts and lanes is to provide a reduced footprint for paving and such to create conforming lots that conform to the zoning. So you'll see lots 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Those 4 lots all fully conform to the zoning in this district. I believe it's R2. I think it's 10,000 square feet with, I think with 90 to get the frontage, but all of these lots are well over that. I think they range from 12 to 16,000 square feet. So they're oversized for what is required in the district. And then also you can see the offset line. So basically there's a side offset, front offset, rear offset. So that inner dash line shows the footprint availability for the structures. And then as far as the roadway, it'll be a proposed 40-foot wide private way. As per the regulations, the 4 homeowners are going to be required to maintain this roadway and all the infrastructure in perpetuity. That's all set forth in the courts and lane regulations where they're not to be accepted by the city. There is a little, you'll see there's a little tag of land at the right of the entry, some extra land. We need to figure out what to do with that. If that just becomes part of the proposed private way, or we talk to the abutter and possibly you just convey that out. That needs to be, we need to figure that out as part of this review process and the best use for that little parcel of land there. And then we don't show, actually, I'll hold off on that as far as the discussion of the driveway for 2029. Next slide, please. This is our layout, roadway layout. We have a 20-foot wide road set within that 40-foot wide right of way. You'll see the first house, you'll come in, the first house is on the left, and then here you see the driveway that'll be carved out. There'll be a new curb cut on Highland, provided with the driveway provided for 20 Highland. At this time, we'd be thinking about providing an easement. There'd be an easement for access easement across lot 1 to provide that driveway. And as you work your way down, all the homes branch off to the left. On the left, lots 2, 3, and 4 with a hammerhead. The hammerhead is designed to accommodate a Newburyport fire truck. This is very similar. I think I've done a number of these in the city. This is somewhat similar to Wright's Court. We did a 4 lot subdivision, courts and lanes project there. I think Donahue Court was only a lane, that was 2. And there was one just approved at, down at Spofford, a lane to provide 2 extra lots, down at the intersection of Merrimack and Spofford. So these are very similar. These are all similar in kind, where you provide the 20-foot pavement width with opportunity for a fire truck for a turnaround. And as far as again, the roadway width is 20 feet, as meets the full requirements of this design standards. I believe the only waivers, the major waiver we're looking for would be a sidewalk. In none of these courts and lanes, we provide sidewalks. People would walk in the street anyhow, would be in these small subdivisions such as this. You know, for that matter, a lot of the streets in Newburyport, the street I live on, on Collins Street, everyone walks in the street. There's a lot more homes on it. and they prefer to walk in the street versus the sidewalks. There's sidewalks on both sides, but they choose to walk the street. So it's really not a necessary, and it's not unnecessary for subdivision in this manner. All right, next slide, please. All right, so here's our grading and drainage. As you can see, it's a little hard to see here, but you can see the proposed contours are darker color. We have a level area up in Highland, and we drop down into the subdivision. I believe the grade's 8% running down, which is well below the maximum allowed, 6 or 8%, dropping down at the steepest, and then levels out at the bottom of the hill. As far as stormwater, the roadway is warped. They're called super elevated or warped from right to left. So there's a gutter line that runs along the left side of the road. As you can see a large green square rectangle at the bottom of near the turnaround. So there's 2 catch basins with a deep sump and a hood to treat the stormwater. And then it's discharged into this is a very large underground chamber system. The chambers will provide storage and infiltration of stormwater. One item of note is we did test pits, confirm the groundwater elevation, which we went 10 or 11 feet, and there was no indication of groundwater at this location. It's very typical on the ridge or up on in this area, Newburyport. The other, it's very clean and permeable gravel. It can take a tremendous amount of water. With the stormwater calculations, they only allow us to utilize the peak rate we're allowed to utilize is 8.2 inches an hour. That's a fraction of what that gravel would take. It's probably would take, the permeability is probably closer to 60 inches an hour or something of that nature. So I've done a few of these, particularly in gravel, and they far outperform the calculations. So we're required as part of the regulations, we're required to provide a full stormwater report and design. That report has been submitted to the peer review agent. He concurs he actually had no comments in the stormwater and agreed with the fact that we're fully mitigating. There is a slight increase of impervious area, but currently there's I think there's a small dry well that really doesn't provide any mitigation for peak rate runoff. It doesn't really accept the tremendous, it's undersized for the amount of pavement there. So really there's very little stormwater mitigation, if any, for the stormwater that's running pretty much to the rear. It runs for the most part to the rear of the property. There's 2 areas. There's an area, about a third of it runs to that area where there's a little pork chop, the little stub at the end. The south side of the parking lot runs to that area. And then probably 2/3 runs to the upper right-hand corner of the lot. So those are our 2 major design points. And as part of the design regulations, we're required to fully mitigate and not allow any increase of rate off the property. And with our design, not only we are reducing the rate, we're reducing the rate and the volume from today's conditions. And as I said, that's taking a very conservative approach with only allowing that basin to infiltrate water at 8.2 inches per hour. Some of these systems, I've done a couple of these. I think I did 2 of them in Amesbury, a system like this. And I went down, I think we had a very large rain event. It was 4 or 5, one of the largest ones we've had in the past couple of years. And no water came out of the system. It fully infiltrated the entire parking lot. So these are very well suited to gravel. As far as water, we're proposing a new water main into the property with a hydrant at the end of the line. We're showing a 6-inch. I believe Dan McGuire had asked it might be increased to an 8, but then I think the DPW director thought that 6-inch was oversized for the property. But if we do provide a hydrant at the end of the line, it needs to be a minimum of a 6. We had a similar situation at the corner of Spofford and Merrimack, and what was agreed upon was a 6-inch water service, which is more than adequate. It's well oversized for the 4 homes. But if you have a hydrant, you need a minimum of a 6-inch to service that hydrant. at the end of the line, providing service, fire service. And then as far as sewer, where we're somewhat lower than Highland Ave, each of the systems, they'll have there'll be a small grinder pump. They call it a low pressure system, pumping the sewage, the sanitary up to Highland Ave. That's a similar operation that we've had in a couple of the, I think we had to do that, one of the first ones I did down at, I think it was Brown Street Extension, Brown Street Extension. It's 4 homes down there. That it's a low pressure sewer system that pumps up to the gravity system. And that's, and one thing you'll note is looking at particularly lot 2 and 3, you'll see there's a pretty tight cluster of contours in the rear of the property. So what happens is we're lower than those lots up at Highland there. We're in elevation, the first floor is down at elevation 86 with the grade about 84 next to our building there in lot 2. And then you'll note that there would be a steep slope up to the rear of 17 Arlington, where the grade up there is around 94, 95. So we're substantially lower, almost a full story lower, where our building would be situated in relation to those lots up there. So that as far as a view, it's gonna take away the full mass of the first floor level of looking out towards the rear of those lots into this area. As we work down the hill, that we kind of catch up to Arlington. So by the time you get to lot 4 is about the grade of the lot on lot 4, which is right in that area, is roughly the same grade as 7 Arlington. You can see we grade down a little bit, but then it runs back up. And you can see actually as far as our discharge points, so you have to outlet the water somewhere. So that elongated, you'll see the 76 contour, that's just a large trough that would be filled with stone, that if water were to come out of the infiltration basin, that's the outlet point. It would pour into that, and there'll be another area where it would have a chance to infiltrate back into the ground before it would run off the property. Our calculations do show runoff off the property, but it is less than it is today, as it exists today. And I can guarantee it, given the infiltration rates of the soil out there and what we had to use on our design, it's going to be far less than what I'm reporting in the calculations. So that's actually jumping back in. So that's one of the discharge points. And then Andy, if you can pan down the lower right, that little tongue area there, that's another depression that we carved out. And so what happens is that manhole, actually it's a dry well, providing additional infiltration. So from that point, this controlled, they call it controlled orifice. So it regulates how much water can flow in each direction. So it balances it to meet the existing conditions. And as I said, both the city engineer and the city's peer review engineer review the calculations and concur they're in agreement with the calculations provided. All right, that should do. We can probably jump to the next. This is just our, we're required to provide a demolition plan and erosion control. So you can see the pink, there's the parking area to be removed, the buildings are removed. The honeycomb area is there will be clearing, clearing on the site. There are some areas of scrub and trees to be cleared. Any large diameter trees, probably within a couple feet of the property line, we would look to maintain. We haven't got to the level of detail to find out where those are, but where we are carving, we're cutting the slope, particularly in lot 2 and 3. So with the cutting the slope to create a level backyard, that area would be cleared and then revegetated.
What's it gonna be revegetated?
There'll be a moment for public comment for folks. Yeah. All right, next slide. All right, this is just a quick, it's just a detail sheet showing the big picture here is that large chamber system. You can see it's a quite robust chamber system. These aren't the little plastic chambers that a lot of people tie their downspouts to. This is each chamber is
think it's 8 by 14 feet long and 5 feet tall. So this is a massive underground reservoir we're holding infiltrated water. And we have 6 of those. So it's very substantial. I was keenly aware, it's probably overdone. But I'm keenly aware of the fact that a lot of the sites, this one's extremely important to mitigate stormwater and probably go a little further than I would normally provide, due to the fact that we are directly discharging onto a couple lots, and we want to make sure that there is no impact whatsoever. In fact, that we'd be improving the situation. And then it's just it's the other details are, that's the main reason, that's actually the main purpose of this slide. Next slide. So this just shows the entry here. This is looking, see, we're looking towards the hospital from Toppins. So you can see you can see the white fence, the curb cut for 16, and then there's an extra curb cut for the medical building, for the office building. That curb cut will be closed up, and we'd probably cut that curb cut in half and redo the sidewalk, but maintain ample curb cut for 20. No, 60, keep going wrong, 60. And then the new curb cut would be between, you can see the utility pole and then the hydrant. So we'd be centered between that with the new lane. And then as far as actually can jump to the next slide. So the curb cut we'd maintain probably, the curb cut would probably roughly where the parking spaces are for the new driveway for 20 Highland. So we provide a curb cut for that location. So we're basically removing one of the curb cuts and gonna shrink down the curb cut. It's a very wide curb cut for the site drive for the hospital, and then we provide a new curb cut for the lane. Right now, as far as the treatment of that, I think the DPW had asked that we handle it as a driveway versus a roadway. So with that, we'd be maintaining the concrete sidewalk surface across the new lane. So it gives pedestrians go to the preference versus, wrapping your curbing around and providing a bituminous entry. That was requested as the way to handle it at Spofford and Merrimack. I did notice one of the comments from the DPW director was talking about providing handicap ramps at that transition, which we wouldn't need them if we maintain the concrete sidewalk. So that's something that we need to confirm with DPW, and also actually the planning board could weigh in on that too. How you would like to see that, but I believe, I'm not sure if DPW trumps planning board or not, but
I think we'll relay this information.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably in a much spot.
Yeah. So that concludes my presentation. Just one item of note is, these lots are, there's not many lots in Newburyport. The old lots in Newburyport meet zoning. I live in a 5,000 square foot lot that requires 9,000 square foot zoning. A number, probably 50% of the lots on Arlington Street don't conform to zoning. So with these lots, as far as massing, will be much less than the surrounding area. And the lots are far larger, but they're larger than what's required by zoning and much larger than the density or the density surrounding the proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay. We're gonna open up questions from the board. Rick?
Maybe the best way to do it is to start from the beginning of the plan set, starting with the existing conditions plan. So, my first question is, the dashed, I would call it trapezoid shape in the lower portion of the lot of Highland Street. You probably told me that, but I don't remember what those dashes represent. It goes through the building and then it.
You're to this line here.
Yeah, that dash.
That was the piece that you broke off, is that?
No, I'm not, as far, I'm not sure. I just, I think it might just be a line remnant from the survey.
It carries through all the plans, so.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's like, when I bring in a survey plan.
Yeah.
It's referenced in, and I'm not, I'd have to check with the surveyor of record to find out what that dashed area is.
Yeah, I think, it'd be great if that doesn't mean anything, great to take.
Yeah, just take it off. It's just like, yeah,
So
confusing.
related to that, or not related to that, but just below that on the south, is this the north, south?
Sure, I believe, I
Yeah,
think
so-
north is to the top, I believe.
So let's call this the bottom side of the building, let's call that south.
Yeah.
There's a curved line, like almost like a semicircle, next to the bituminous concrete wall. That cuts through the
Yeah.
contour line. And then it carries through to the next plant too. I was wondering what that is,
Good chance of planting bed, they just,
but on the next plan it's still there, so that line probably should go away. On the next plan too.
Yeah.
Okay. Just clarifying things. So, going then to the next plan, which is the subdivision site plan, I guess you call it. So when I look at the regulations, and this may be more of a question for Andy than for you. It says that the court or lane shall access the property over the frontage of at least one of the lots being served by the driveway. But that doesn't look like what's happening here. It looks like it's not going over any lots. It looks like it is, defining a lot rather than going over them.
well,
What does that mean?
it's over the, it's a good question. This is, so we have one, the way I've always done these, you have one big lot. And the roadway has, I think what it says, what that's saying is we couldn't come from 16 or 18 into services. So basically it's coming over lot one. So it is coming through the frontage of lot one. Depending how you interpret it.
It's just,
Yeah, I can't speak to the origins of that, and there are two things that come to mind, again, not having been here, I guess, the origin, that some of these permitted to go back, but, there is, sometimes this issue of public way versus private way, and having the land itself clearly delineated, who's actually maintaining it, so having that tied to a property versus, in this case, I think that we've always seen, these projects proposed as a true right of way separate from the lots themselves, and so the lots are carved up next to where you're accessing off of the way that's being created. So I'm not sure, I can't speak to the origins of the portion of that
Yeah.
you're referring to, maybe, but
So the only thing I can think of that is that there is a provision, if, say you don't need to create frontage, I believe you can use the courts and lands to create a common driveway versus a subdivision. So, then that would mean that, okay, if you have a common driveway, it has to come from you can't come across another lot to get to your right.
I think we've almost always,
I've only done
I think I've only seen it this way, I'm trying to think of a scenario like that, you can cross the lot.
or just, have them create.
Pretty,
You can create, using it as an easement or whatever, an easement for.
one of these many things that we need to clean up in the building somewhere.
well, some of it is actually like partially a subdivision regulation in a way, but it's embedded in this, right, the zoning right now. But, yeah.
And so then going on to the next, one, which is so just out of curiosity, why would you keep that driveway, 20 Highland on your property? Why wouldn't you just do a lot line change to incorporate it to 20 Highland?
As I said, we're entertaining each, as far as carving the parcel out or providing an easement, it provides the same, the same result. It'll be part of this process, how we handle that driveway.
Because I think when we did the one on Spofford, I think you did lot line adjustments as well as you had two different things going on there. You had the lot line adjustments, the Carson, the Courts and Lane project.
That kind of mix. It was an A&R.
Right.
And so we did have a lot, one of those, it was a common, and it's funny, it was a common driveway with a lot line down the middle of the driveway for that.
Yeah.
And then I think the third one, the third house coming off of Merrimack, the drive, it was just falling apart at the A&R. Ended up being on on the lot 3 property.
And so it would seem to be cleaner to
Yeah.
just take it off your property. And it kind of goes along with what you were saying about the extra land on the right side of the driveway.
Yes.
So if that were, this driveway will be owned by a homeowners association?
The common driveway, the lane will be owned by the homeowners association.
So anything that is related to landscaping within the limits of the driveway would be the responsibility of the homeowners association. And the same thing would go with that triangular piece of extra.
Correct.
And also with the maintenance of actually, all of the stormwater stuff is on lot 4.
Well, the majority, so lot 4, the outlets are all in lot, the outlet control or the outlet sumps are all in lot 4. So yeah, we'd have to provide an easement for the maintenance of that. But as far as the meat of it is, as far as the chambers, it's underneath the road, which is part of the private way.
I think when we reviewed the court or lane, whatever it was, on Birches, Prospect, Hancock. I think we looked for easements for those.
Yeah.
So we would want to see, I think we'd want to see those on this plan.
The next plan, I think as we work through this, the next update, we'll provide all the easements and dictate how we're gonna handle. We'll work out how we're handling that slice to the south and then the driveway, for, 20 and the stormwater also.
So then going on to the next, the grading plan. So explain again, I mean, you did a good job of explaining about these sumps for the leftover drainage in that little end piece over there. But you have the stone overflow berm on the very right-hand side. What happens to that one?
So,
Or you think it's never
and
gonna
I think it's only I think the only time we have flow off the flows would be in a 100-year event.
Yeah.
And so that's there to dictate and that would be the berm where the water would flow. That's, if you look at the contours, that's where it flows today. So we let it flow to the same spot. But, I could,
I guess
I can tell you just based on the soils, I don't think we'll ever see any water come out of that.
I guess my
Based on my experience.
question is really about whether by doing this, you're creating, like right now, it would more or less be kind of overland flow. If anything flowed off, it would be overland flow.
It's all, yeah, so.
But this would be like a concentrated point of it. Would replace a spread place with concentrated place.
Well, yeah, so that's, typically if you look at the contours direct, if you follow the water, when we do the stormwater, we do the time of concentration and you follow the water, the concentration of the water and where it discharges to. And for that drainage area, that's where, based on the contours, that's where it would discharge to. The thing, the problem is if you try and create anything level, it slopes down in that manner. So it'd be difficult to smear it out on over a long area.
I guess
We could probably get about 20-foot level. I could probably create a 20-foot level berm. So it would, instead of that's concentrated to about 6 feet. So we could probably increase and create a larger level area. We call it level spread.
I guess what I was wondering was whether if you made that storage area smaller, you pulled it back, then it could spread out before it got to the property.
You leave that intact. Yeah.
Yeah, so you should just
That's what I'm saying. So
just got the best concentration when you get to the property.
yeah. Okay. There's no, and that way you could probably leave instead of disturbing that area. There's no need to have it that large.
Yeah.
I hear you.
And I
Okay.
guess part of my overall background for this is trying to see how much we can limit
Yep.
the disturbance of the land next to the property lines of the abutters.
Yep.
So that
Good
whatever
point.
buffer there is gets maintained.
No, this is great, Rick. You keep going.
Jump in, please. Um, so kind of the odd shape of lot 4 is really determined by the need to provide the hammerhead turn.
The lot, well, we kind of,
Yeah,
so the furthest, I don't know, I don't know, I guess, so as far as that angle,
it's just a, well,
I could straighten, there's no reason, I don't know why, that could be straightened out and created more perpendicular. Cause I don't think we need anything, we got plenty of frontage, I can probably take that line and slide it to the left corner and just go perpendicular to the back, take that angle out. I think that was a comment, I think I saw that comment, the city might have had a
right, yeah, John Eric. Had
Yeah.
that comment, right.
Yeah, I don't know that, yeah, I'm not sure that, you know what that was, and we lay stuff out, sometimes you forget, you know, we're doing it and something moves and you forget to move it. But no, that makes sense to create a perpendicular line there versus that angle, there's no need for that to be in that manner. That's, you know, both lots have plenty of land.
And you said, going to the grading plan then, you said you try to keep some of the larger trees, but you really, it looks like you're disturbing the entire.
Pretty much, you know, this is, yeah, so the question is if there's a tree, you know, if there's a nice mature tree that's worth keeping on that property line, then you could probably berm, either do a tree, you know, you could come 6 feet, 8 feet off, do a little tree, you know, it would be, you know, opposite of a tree.
I guess
But we will be cutting roots in the drip line.
I'm wondering if you can take that steep slope at the back of lot 2.
Yeah.
Whether you could do that further into the lot and
Well-
leave more flat area at the top, like the property line, which would give it the ability to preserve some buffer, right? You know, because what you're doing basically is I think you're getting rid of all the. You know?
Well, yeah, we gotta balance that with, you know, of course, you take, you know, with that, we're losing usable land for the house. You know, there's other ways to look at it. You can do a landscape, you know, just do a stone landscape wall. I can talk to Jay. You know, I know you did some landscape walls down in Hancock. So instead of doing a slope that eats up a lot of land, just let's go vertical or do a little terrace. You come up, you know, 4 feet and retain it, and you can have a plan, you know, so they're not staring at a 10-foot wall. You can cut it into 2 little terraces or 8-foot long to do 4 feet. But yeah, we'll look at that. That's something Jay and I could just walk that property line and see if there's anything valuable out there as far as the trees in that
Well,
area.
value could be just screening.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have
But
to,
if it's,
wouldn't have to be an 8-foot truck, it could be a.
Yeah.
So, and I guess I'm just thinking that you have the houses that you're showing here are so much larger than anything in the neighborhood that you could cut down the scale a little bit and pull the development a little bit further away and preserve some of that. Because this really isn't like the neighborhood around it.
no, well, no, of course, yeah. Can't. Yeah, well, we can't because you can't do that. We couldn't develop it that manner because you're not gonna get that, you know, that type of density in here just because of the zoning requiring larger lots.
I think that's all I have.
And so I have one, it's probably more of a comment. I know when we looked at situations like this before, and tonight you had mentioned, you know, it's a courtyard, court lane combination, and it doesn't need a sidewalk because there's only so many. And I would struggle with that because, you know, for me, you know, one, you don't know who's gonna buy homes, you don't know the age. There could be 2-year-olds and 100-year-olds, right? And so to have 2 lanes of traffic, albeit maybe neighborly, it always seems to me that someone's gonna have to jump off the road at some point. We get snow, it doesn't get removed. There's a whole lot of reasons why we have sidewalks. And maybe it's not, if you're gonna do it, you should do it right. But I struggle with that. We just, instead of just bouncing over it and saying, well, it's small, you know, there'll be
or residents. So I don't know what we, as a group, will have to debate that at some point, but I just hold it up as a flag.
And we have a list of waivers we requested.
Yeah, I believe it was. Was. Yeah, no, it's on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have two questions. Jamie, one's really simple. You referenced in the city engineer's email reference peer review, but I didn't see that in the files. I don't know if that was embedded in the document.
It's funny you ask, I wonder what I was gonna ask, it looks like that was only uploaded to the subdivision record, so it is there. I noticed the same thing myself, and I was gonna flag it for Caitlin, so because I noticed the board members might be confused as well, so we'll make sure that that document is also added to the special permit record, but it is, one of the bottom patterns now in the subdivision. Bill Christensen, so we have now both the comments from the consulting peer engineer, Bill Christensen, as well as the city's engineer, John White, in those two permit records.
And my second question is, because you didn't really get to the special permit criteria and then this topic of the size of the house before I popped up, I think it would be helpful, rather than us to speculate, I can imagine some of the constraints you had, but rather than us speculate, I think it'd be helpful if you describe just a little bit how you arrived at 4 lots instead of 5. Because you have the area 55 or 3, which, because the size of the lots definitely dictates the size of the structures that's allowable. So just understanding how you arrived at that number, I think would be helpful.
All right, yeah, so once you go beyond 4 lots, you're subject to the full subdivision control regulations. So with that, you end up with a 50-foot right of way, and you have the full round, the full hammerhead, the full rounding at the end of the road. So with that, with the size of the right of way there, I think that drops you from 4 to 3. You can't get to 5. So 4 is basically the maximum you can get in with the layout that we have. We could do less, but the expense of the road and financially, we don't even know if this is viable, but trying to cut, there's no reason to go to 3. The lots are already oversized from what zoning allows. So that's, basically the layout. This is what the lot can support, and that's how we arrived at it.
You mentioned that you're cutting into the gradient in lot 2 in the back. Is that the only lot, or are you also cutting into it on lot 3?
There's a little bit of cut. You can see there's like a 4-foot cut in lot 3 there.
Yeah.
And then we actually terrace out a little bit as you work down. So a little bit of cut at the top, and then you can see there's a steep grade that runs through the sort of the back of those lots, and we can sort of on lot 3 we're going to be easing that up, and then on lot 2 we're just pushing, creating a flat space in the backyard.
And as far as that, then is there any change in gradient where the proposed house locations are? Or is it still maintaining the existing grade? There's no additional fill going there?
They're pretty close. We pretty much we match along the parking lot. We pretty closely match the grades there. I don't know if you zoom in. I can kind of, if you can look.
Shoot the houses mean or?
Yeah, the homes. If you can zoom in on lot. If you can start, like, I guess, zoom in between the 2 lots there. Yeah, so it's 83.
83 is right here.
83 and 82, so you can see, so 83 on lot 2, and the house is set, first floor is at 86.8. So the grade there you can see is 84 around it. So we're filling up a foot there. And then as we work our way down, you get 82 bisecting lot 3, and we're at 83.3. Yeah, so you can see 82, so we're, we're 82 and a half. So it's within a foot or 2 of the existing grade. So we're matching it really closely.
Any more questions before we open up to comments?
One big picture question. Did you consider at all, kind of following, instead of having the road on the south side, putting all the houses on the north side of the track, did you consider the possibility of following the north side of the parking lot, pavement, and because what's happening is you've got a neighborhood on the north, but it looks to me like you've got pretty much vacant land in the south, so you're not really, it's backland for condos that run on High Street, so it would seem to me you have less, potentially less impact on the neighborhood if you flipped, if you were able to flip, or maybe even just one lot on the north and two lots on the south, that kind of.
Unfortunately, the way, unfortunately, because of the sawtooth nature of that north lot, see how it kind of, you fit lot, you create those lots that are created within that sawtooth. If you had a roadway on that north side, you know, all of a sudden you end up with this land that becomes a really no man's land. So of course, we did look at it. I did look at it. But where we have that, the straight property line, it makes perfect sense to put the roadway in that straight property.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking about, if you look at that red line, that's kind of, we're looking at the grading plan right now. That's the red line, you can almost think about the back parts of lots 2 and 3 as being a lot, and then I'm not saying that would be better, just to know. Try to come up.
I tried, I looked at a number of ways to work that road, and as I said, unfortunately, if you do run the road up to the north, when any lots to the south, you have a nice end lot. You'd end up with an okay end lot, but maybe you could end up with 2 decent end lots, but really you lose the 2 lots up towards the road. Or I don't know if you can make I don't think we can make the prescribed lot area. They end up becoming very, very shallow, and I'm not sure we can fit the, I don't think we can fit the box in also, unfortunately.
We're gonna open up the public comment questions. We asked that. Oh, is there somebody else that's supposed to speak here?
No, I'm just waiting
Okay.
for public comment.
When you come up, please state your name, your address, and we also like to limit your comments and questions to about 2 minutes, if you don't mind.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Douglas DeShane from Finner and Nicholson, representing Nan Mar and Carl Carpenter. They're the owners of the property at 11 Arlington Street, and if you can just put up a plan, Andy, so we can give the board some context. My clients, and I'm going to speak rather quickly because it's going to be tough for me to get this in 2 minutes, but I appreciate it. You can see where that yellow line jogs in to the north side. That is my client's property right there. So if you go to one of the subdivision plans, that would be great. There was one with a magenta line around the project. I think that really was probably the best plan for me to speak to. But in any event, the project is being developed on essentially 3 sides of my client's property, and so they are one of the most affected properties, or most affected by this development. I'm not here necessarily to oppose this project, but rather make sure that the board and the applicant are cognizant of my client's concerns and hopefully willing to work with us to address them. The first concern I have, or my clients have, is that in 2016, my clients received an easement from the Highland Associates. I believe they own the medical building. The easement essentially allowed my clients to put a fence and retaining walls within this easement area that surrounds their property. We've seen no recognition of that easement on these plans, and so we would certainly ask the applicant to put the easement on the plan, and also potentially work with us to make sure that my client's rights under that easement are not being affected by this. I actually brought copies of the easement and the easement plans for the board and the applicant. So that's our first and very important concern, is we want to make sure that this they are recognizing and respecting that easement.
Sorry, Doug, are you saying at the very back of the lot?
On the back and on each side. Yeah, you can see there's a difference between where the existing fence and their property line is. And so that pretty much is easement area. It's not a significant easement, but my clients have a fence and retaining walls within the easement. So we want to make sure that that's been considered in the design here.
To the left side.
Right.
I don't know what this line is here. That is not.
Well, we can read it.
Yeah, I have a plan for you. You can see it. To keep things moving, our second concern, and I think it's shared among many of the neighbors here, is the drainage. Given the topography here, these steep slopes, my client's very concerned that the water that's currently passing over their property through an existing drainage system out the back of their property, that the engineers in designing the drainage took that into consideration and make sure that the drainage system is considering that. Also to the right side where that B2-1 structure is located, or that's a topo line, but that the lot 4 structure, there's a tremendous amount of water that's coming down that hill right now. And again, we only hope that they have taken that into consideration. While my client understands the applicant has the right to cut trees and vegetation in the lower portion of the lot, that area has been the location where all of the water coming off of Arlington and down through this existing development has been running and ponding and infiltrating. But cutting all of those trees certainly is going to impact the ability of that area to absorb the water. But also those trees have been a buffer to this neighborhood with respect to noise, the condos, High Street. And one of the things we haven't seen is a proposed planting plan. As far as, given the number of large trees to be removed, where are they going to be replaced? And how is that going to affect the neighborhood and the buffering and whatnot? My next issue, and again, I'm sorry, I'm running through these quickly because I know I have a time limit, is the concern of the close proximity of the structure on lot 4. While currently that bump out to the rear does meet the 10-foot required setback, sure how far it is from the easement. It certainly is less than 10 feet. And quite frankly, that structure is just imposing on my client's property. I see no reason, and they see no reason why perhaps that couldn't be shifted to the right a little, so that it's more in line with the structure itself. I don't think there's going to be usable property to the right of this building, given the topography. So we would ask for some consideration in potentially moving that building aside more, so it's not right on top of my clients. As you can see, as I said earlier, they're being affected on all 3 sides. They got lot 4 right next door, lot 3 is right up behind them, the turnaround. I know there's some topography there, but when the cars pull in there to turn around, they're basically facing right up to my client's property. So, and again, the concern about the proposed devegetation completely surrounding their property. If you look at the plan that showed the hatched areas of impact, again, really concerned about what that's going to look like, what's going to be there for trees and vegetation when they're done. If I had more time, I'd go into a little more detail, but I appreciate your ability or your time. Thank you very much.
Can I just have one shot of that house that the gentleman was talking about? Can we show that on the aerial view to see where the house is on that lot?
It actually shows in the grading plan.
Oh, it does.
So if you want to see
The grading plan actually shows it. Yeah.
see the footprint right here.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and then there's the garage to the lower.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you get the, drawing of,
Could you state your name?
my name is Peter Fitzsimmons, and representing, well, myself and my wife Mary. And we live in a lot next to Carl's, 7 Arlington Street. We've been living there for 50 years, okay? So we were here when the original variance of the medical building was given. In fact, I have a copy of it here. Has anybody seen that?
Something like a speech about.
Okay, I just want, it's purely historical. It was issued on June 19th, 1979. But I pulled a copy of it last week. I went down to your office. Well, I got it off the clerk. And I haven't seen any change to it. So the variance is still there. Now, I know it's essentially worthless because you can override it. But I would point out there were 2 stipulations in that variance. One, and they were put in there at the specific request of the abutters who had obviously objected to having a parking lot in their backyard. It was to maintain a, what they called a green belt buffer zone for eternity. There was also a stipulation 1, that would prohibit any further expansion of the parking, medical building, etc. Stipulation 1 was kind of overridden within about 6 months. The doctors who owned it began building onto the building. They said they needed more facility. The board, you guys denied it. They took you to courts. Eventually they got what they wanted. Anyway, that's all history. But my 2 issues are stormwater and sewage. I didn't hear the civil engineer mention anything about sewage. The stormwater, if you can get that sketch up, so it shows those riprap level spreaders. Okay, there's one down in that peculiar piece of land down on the far right. That's the huge one. Okay, but out of their, I don't think they call it the leach chamber, they run a pipeline right through lot number 4 to another riprap level spreader right on my property line, our property line at 7 Arlington Street. You see it up there? We gotta get over there. Up and back of lot 4, right up on the back edge. That's our property. Peter and Mary, they got a level spreader running across most of our property. We got trees there, right on the border. And we don't want water, stormwater, being shoved into our backyard. That's our big issue. It's even worse for the people down there. Number 5 is also right in their backyard. 251, 253 High Street. I don't know if they're going to get it dumped into their backyard. So what I'd like to see is, well, first of all, I'd like to see a whole hydrologic analysis done on this whole thing. The civil engineer says no problem. Percolative soil that absorb all the water. Well, we've already had flooding back then because the drains often get, well, I should say in the past, the drains would get clogged up. We get big storms in the spring, some melt from snow, water would go right up close to our backyard. It wasn't going down. I don't know if it was the ground was still hard or what, but we got flooded, or at least close to being flooded. And we've also seen over the last 50 years, the whole top of the hill where Anna Jakes is. When we moved here 50 years ago, that was a farm up there. Anna Jakes was a little hospital, a little parking lot. Now the entire top of that hill is paved. It's impermeable surface. So if we get one of these 15, 20-inch rainfalls that they're predicting, and well, fortunately, I think most of it goes down onto Low Street,
for us anyway, not for Low Street people. But that lane that they're building, that's gonna pick up some of the overflow from the hospital as well as from Highland Avenue. The catchment isn't just their road, the catchment, that basin, that tank they're putting down at the bottom is a good part of the top of that hill, potentially. I don't know if you were, in 2023, in Leominster, they got 11 inches of rain in 5 hours. Millions of dollars of damage, and it was all done by stormwater. It wasn't done by river flooding, or sea level rise. It's done by stormwater. So I would like to see a real hydrologic analysis done to this area and take into account not just the 30-year FEMA type of rainfall, but what people are predicting as a result of climate change. Something like 11 inches in 5 hours, even 15, 20 inches would not be abnormal. But in any case, I don't want that, I don't want anything done to my board. The other issue I have is with sewage. Nobody here has talked about. Anybody interested in sewage?
I think we may address the portion of that.
The way they're getting rid of sewer is every lot will have its own little pump in its front yard, okay? And then they'll pump it into a common sewer pipe that will take it up to Highland. Is that, have I got that right? So, okay, so these are electric pumps. I don't know where they're gonna be fused and operated. I don't know what kind of alarms they have. The pump fails, or if they have overflows, or they get plugged up. I don't know what kind of backflow they're gonna have on the sewer pipe, because otherwise they could just be pumping it down the hill, up the hill. And also sewer from up the hill to down the hill. Again, it goes into this property here. So I guess my whole issue with this whole thing is, I think the city should really own this street. They should have real lift to get the sewer out of there. They should have a real drainage system and a way of getting the water, not dumping it onto neighbors, not dumping on mine at 7 Arlington, nothing onto 5 Arlington, nothing onto 251, 252, and 253, where it's all headed for now. That's my, until I see something better. Ken.
We'd like to remind the audience, the members coming up to speak, that we'd like to limit it to 2 minutes.
I'm with him. I just want to remind people that that whole area at, by lot 4 is woods right now. It's, so come and take a look at it. It's woodsy, and that would all be cut down. Whole loss, huge loss of green area.
Thank you.
So Wade Amos, I live at 6 Highland Ave. Some of my concerns are more with how this might affect traffic and utilities on Highland Ave. One thing I noticed in the narrative is they're talking about 4 houses, and their traffic is being defined for 4 houses. I know there's some concerns that someone might try adding right-of-ways onto this lane. So if this is permitted, I want to make sure that this is designed for 4 houses, that you don't just add extra lots to the south of this, possibly if it's not designed for it. One question I had is on the new lineup of the driveway. Currently, that driveway coming out the medical center lines up exactly with the exit from the parking lot. If you offset that, is that going to create a traffic hazard by having a new driveway that doesn't line up with the existing driveway? Just does it create confusion by having that as an offset driveway? I'm not looking for an answer, just raising his concern. My understanding is from the report that there's no utilities that have to be changed on Highland Ave. That's a fairly new street that's been repaved recently. So I would not be happy as a homeowner to see that dug up for new water utilities and new sewer utilities, because in town, we have not done a good job repairing roads after utility work has been done. Just have to look at Tobbins Lane or Roslyn Ave, and you're aware of what I'm talking about. One argument in the narrative is that there's less traffic because the medical building is no longer a business and it's just those homes. One thing I would like to point out is that because that is a business, at night after 5 or 6 o'clock, there's absolutely no traffic and no noise created by that property. When you switch to the houses, you are going to have traffic and noise coming from those lots. So it's, yes, it will be reduced, but you know, it's not a fair comparison with the effect on the neighborhood at night. And then again, we're talking sewers. If we are pumping into that sewer main, I just have concerns being downhill from it. If there's any potential for backup, if that's a pressure main, if something were to plug, how would that be relieved other than coming into my house? So those are some of my concerns with the layout and development.
Hello, everyone. I'm Patrick, 13 Arlington Street.
Your last,
So, what?
what's your last?
Oh, what? So my first concern is that Mr. Short is talking about trees, and I would like to know what his qualifications for grading trees and understanding trees are.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, no.
Yeah, but you can't really ask questions. You can just say.
So- He's assessing trees and that would lot there, and that he's taking his stormwater management conditions from the existing conditions. But if you're to remove all those trees from the property, which are really relatively mature, how does that contribute to the additional runoff on the property? And furthermore, the applicant hasn't addressed the significant cut that's going to happen on lot 2 and 3. So that's a significant slope that's going to happen there. And there's nothing in the plans right now to address that. So there's no definition of retaining walls or, anything like that. So I would ask the applicant to address that situation immediately because that's a significant cut, not a layback excavation on the property line.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Natalie Nick, and I live at 19 Arlington Street. I submitted a letter to the planning board, and I'd like to read some of that, even though hopefully you already took the chance to see it. As a butters of the proposed development, we have concerns about the significant impact on our views, the existing wildlife and vegetation, and the character of our neighborhood of modest homes. We realize that infill housing is a reality and that Newburyport needs new housing production to address local housing demand. However, the subdivision plans indicate what appear to be very large houses, which would be out of scale with the existing modest homes most of us have been living in for over, they've been around for over 100 years. The houses on Arlington Street and Highland Ave have small yards, and the 25-foot setback puts the new houses very close to several houses on Arlington Street, including ours. It seems that the plans call for cutting down all or most of the existing trees, which would have a real impact. I ask, what control does the planning board have to keep new development in scale with an existing neighborhood? Also, as Rick mentioned, could the new houses be located on the other side of the proposed lane so that they don't back up against existing houses? I'd like that to get some further consideration. We would like additional information, including architectural plans that illustrate the elevations, scale, and location of the new buildings, showing how they will appear and compare to the existing homes. We'd like landscaping plans, and I would like a better understanding of what all this taking away, scaling the slope. I mean, I'm just having trouble visualizing what that would look like, standing there looking at a large retaining wall. We've lived in our home for 25 years, and the developer's argument that the existing office building and parking lot does not fit in with community character does not hold merit for us. The parking lot is where children play and learn how to ride bikes during non-business hours. And in the summer, the large trees screen the parking lot from our view. We have lived harmoniously with this mixed use, just as we do with the hospital and all the associated non-residential activity in our neighborhood. We would much prefer that the office building and parking lot remain rather than be replaced with huge multi-million-dollar homes that are out of scale with the surrounding neighborhood, as we have seen elsewhere around the city. At this point, from what we understand of the plan submitted to the planning board, we request rear yard setbacks maximized, existing trees preserved, and new trees planted to create a visual barrier. We also think that it would be very helpful to have an opportunity to meet with the developer and the planning board and to walk the property to receive more information and to determine ways to minimize the impact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Russo, I'm at 253 High Street, and if you put up that map again, I can show you where I am. There we go. It's on the Juggernaut. I'm on the other end of that outcropping there, and it abuts my property. When I've been in the house for over 34 years, my neighbor, is not here. He and I took down the fence that was there originally, and we have had the pleasure of actually seeing the woods and having the woods in our backyard for most of the time that I lived there. I have gotten to know the trees pretty well. I love trees and all the wildlife that actually is there, and that land is sometimes misused. Sometimes kids used to come in there and, drink and do whatever else or whatever. But we love that backyard. We love that has been an extension of our backyard. I'm not sure whether the new development is actually wants to put fence there. I hear that it's going to be drainage. It is so much more than drainage to us. So I'd like to know, I'm sure that everybody is concerned about, we've all gotten used to, again, like they said, nighttime, everybody goes. It's just, it's a large, we've just gotten used to having space. So this is hard. This is very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Stephen Hawk, running 5 Arlington Street. My wife, Mary Jo Palermo, is here with us tonight as well. Okay?
Yes.
Listen, I thank you all for this forum, and I thank my fellow letters who've been very good and strong on some of the points I make, so I want to replicate them, but perhaps just state a couple of things here very quickly. One is the greatest concern, if I could have that slide up, please, that shows the new homes relative to the size of the existing homes. It might require zooming in because the outlines of the existing homes.
There's still, it is a little hard to,
Yeah, it's really hard to see. I think they're on the conversion. Anyway, it's just, I don't know. I think the homes are still being designed. I had a conversation with Jay where he said this is still being worked out. I don't know how set in stone they are with these footprints, but they are extremely concerning. I mean, on 5 Arlington, which is where I live, we have 3,400 square feet. It's not half the size of the thing that's gonna be built on what I see the footprint of number 4. People are buying smaller homes these days. I have stats here from the National Association of Realtors. The days of the McMansions, the giant things are slipping away. We have higher heating and cooling costs. People are wisening up to the environmental impact of these huge homes. I don't see why they need to be so big as to encroach upon our lifestyles and our homes. Peter has been very strong, my neighbor Peter Fitzsimmons, on the negative aspects of the aspects of the drainage system, which we need to question. I think some of these issues could be mitigated simply by building smaller homes with greater setbacks from our property. We can talk about the old trees, which provide so much, and I heard them described as scrub, which, okay, I suppose it is scrub, but it's productive scrub. And it provides mitigation of stormwater in a natural way. I think about and planting of new trees. Okay, so that's a great idea. And how much do you know about new trees? Listen, new trees, we can plant them. Maybe we can protect them. You described maybe some of the old trees can be maintained. Maybe they can't. I suspect, especially with how close this home is on lot number 4 to my property line, to the old trees that are in that area. You got it. Thank you very much. A lot of old trees in there that are wildlife, but more importantly, natural mitigation of stormwater. To lose those and say, all right, we're going to plant new trees in any kind of proposed clear cutting scenario. Bottom line is we have a slope like we have on Arlington Street. We need the extensive root systems of mature trees to stabilize soil, prevent erosion, and regulate the water cycle. So finally, I just say, let me be clear, I'm not saying not in my backyard. As you guys would say, well, it's not your backyard. It isn't. But it is our backyard in a larger sense. Joe and I have lived here for almost 5 years. This home, many others either are married for much longer. We feel this is part of our lives and we look out on it every day. What is being proposed will have a direct impact on us. And what I can see, it will have a direct negative impact. Aesthetically alone, what is proposed does not fit. In my view, it looks like something you build in the suburbs, not in our neighborhood where homes are modest and old, well over 100 years in many cases. The homes are classic Newburyport on Arlington Street and Highland Avenue. They have character. Maintaining this character is a value that I believe most in this city possess, and hopefully those of you in this room hold dear, and even raise the issue of affordability. Jamie's son will be help with that. Please don't understand, I'm not against development. I understand cities grow, development is inevitable, but let us develop smartly. And in this case, that means, I hate to say it, going back to the time where we need to rethink this whole thing. That is, if you insist on going forward with it, because we in the neighborhood deserve better. Thank you very much.
I just want to add, it's not an NIMBY issue for me either. I would say smaller homes, maybe some nice capes, affordable. Isn't that a big issue in the city?
Amen. My name is Glenn Casey. I live at 19 Arlington Street. And I'd like to thank all of our neighbors for showing up tonight. I'd like to thank the volunteer planning board for doing your job and making it so that it's not the wild, wild west in Newburyport. Counselors who have given us communication, the planners, planning department. It's a lot of people to thank, but I'm here to say what everybody else has already said. We need to protect the trees. We need to protect the landscape. We need to have it fit in with the neighborhood. The size, the character is not appropriate for a historic neighborhood like Arlington Street and Highland Street. It's totally out of it. If you want to do it someplace else. And, I would like to say that if you do it properly, welcome to our neighborhood. Just be sensitive and respectful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everything has been said for the most part. Jamie Stone Carter at 3 Arlington. I think two of the things I am concerned about is the road being on the south side. There's all wood, which Rick had brought up. And it leads us to believe that this is just a matter of time before they clear the other side of the interior of our block and put up more $1 million homes. It doesn't seem like putting the road on the north side would be such a problem to scale back the houses so that we have privacy and a buffer if you're not planning to do that in the future. The other thing is we just got over this whole Kmart apartment building business, and there has to be a certain amount of affordable housing in Newburyport. And now with more production of huge unaffordable homes for most, we're going to be putting up 6 more apartment buildings to create the same percentage. I'm exaggerating, but still, you know what I mean. We're going to be still facing the same problem over again that we're just trying to solve now. So that's all, and my neighbors are awesome.
Is there anybody else for a public comment?
Excuse me, is this going to be our last time to make a public comment?
If I could do the share. Yeah, go ahead. Hey, just to be clear, from my mind, I can't speak for the board, but I would suspect based on years of experience, there's likely to be a continuance of this matter to another night. And typically every night that the board is hearing a matter, there's an opportunity for comment because there might be new materials and so forth. So generally speaking, there will be an opportunity at some future night to comment again.
And if I could just add, in that timeframe, there'll be other information, as the applicant said, is rough detail, then it gets more refined and more refined. So the next time that you come, and we hope you come, we enjoy everyone coming to watch us, you'll have more to look at, there'll be more details about the areas of concern.
For those of us who work and travel when we work, could we have a little bit more time and notification so we can plan to be here? I came back from a trip early.
Yeah, sorry, just in terms of the continuity, the notice of the next day is typically given here. This is the actual continuity when the board, if the board is making a continuance to another night, that's the continuity it's given. So that would be your notice. We do post on the website. We do try to provide streaming for folks.
Is it usually just 2 weeks notice?
When you say notice, it's only the initial public hearing opening that has the legal notice to abutters and in the paper and whatnot. It's the continuance from there that happened verbally at the meeting. The board makes a motion to continue to future nights, and that's the general notice.
And I was gonna say that that it really depends, we'll come up with what we think is needed for our next meeting, and the applicant will say, well, I can get it done, because they would need to have it done in.
Yeah,
10 days, right?
yeah, to that point, actually, the board hasn't gotten this discussion yet, they'll allow that process to unfold, but generally speaking, I would not recommend in this case, probably a continuance for 2 weeks, because that means the applicant only has really 1 week to prepare plans, meaning the board has at least 1 week to review those materials. So it's more likely that something like this will be continued for a month or so.
Okay, just to give us enough time. I mean, this was a surprise during the holiday season. And
Understood.
21 days notice.
Understood. Yeah.
21 days notice, that's fine. Now it's on the website.
Okay.
You'll see
Thank
that agendas are posted. You'll be able to log in and check all that.
New materials are posted to the same OpenGov record that is linked to the website from the agendas for these meetings. And if any materials are coming in from the applicants, you'll be able to see those there too. The board takes a look at them. Applicants are advised to submit those certainly no later than a week before the meetings. And obviously we try to get things in sooner. The board can always flag for an applicant at a hearing, something's come in too late, and more time to be for review. So that sometimes comes up as an issue because folks hear when we have butters.
But you know my point.
I understood.
Yeah.
I think the board understood.
Steve, Jay, would you like to answer some questions? Sure.
I think we should close it up.
Yeah, just to be, anybody.
All right, sorry. Close public comment. Steve and Jay can answer questions.
So actually, I'll cover some, I'm just gonna run through a couple of the technical items. So again, there's been much, yeah. Yeah. So there's been much discussion about stormwater here, and somebody was concerned that there wasn't a hydrological study. It's been uploaded to, it's on OpenGov, there's a full stormwater report. It's been fully vetted and reviewed. We take into consideration there's actually stormwater, a fair amount of stormwater that comes onto the property from abutting lots that we included in our drainage area as part of the hydrological model. And then as far as the concern, okay, there's a change of soil type. That's also considered in the model when we're running these calculations. There's, when you convert woods to grass, there's more runoff, and that's included in the model and shown in the end result. So as far as the change of vegetation type, that's all included. As far as I am not a landscape architect. I'd just be walking, if I were to look at trees to save, I'd walk the perimeter. If there was a tree of large diameter that looked like it provided a buffer, we'd say, okay, let's see if there's a way to save it. Other than that, we'd be just cutting right to the property line. Or we'd start our cut slope at the property line. But in order to try and work with the neighbors, I'd encourage Jay and I to walk it and see if there's any buffer that would make sense to save. And also, comments from the planning board will relook at that cut slope. It's a 2-to-1 cut slope, which is a standard engineering practice that can be stabilized. In lieu of that, we'd look at providing a flat buffer with a landscape wall or some sort of wall. I think there was a concern of looking at a wall. Arlington Street's above us, so you wouldn't be looking at a wall. You wouldn't be looking at the wall, you'd be looking over. And actually the houses being lower reduces the impact of the massing and size because of that, particularly lots 2 and 3. And as far as pressure sewer is it's a very common application. It's in sewage. I think I've done a couple subdivisions in town with that. I think one of the first courts and lanes down on Brown Street, it's a low pressure sewer. And what happens is once it ties to the city system, it becomes gravity. So it's not fully pressurized. It's only pressure in the system itself. Once it connects to the city system, it then flows as gravity. So we wouldn't be forcing any sewer down it, the city sewer would not become pressurized. It would remain as gravity. I think those are the ones that, the comments that I picked up, the major ones. It seems as if the major technical comment is stormwater. And I just want to reiterate the fact that I've designed many projects in Newburyport, and I'm kind of actually a little bit of a geek about it. I've gone during some of the larger rain events, I go and look and see how they operate. And I can tell you from my experience, they always overperform than what's designed because of the conservative nature of the calculations that we have to apply to it. So, thank you.
Sorry, Rick has a follow-up.
Oh,
So on the existing conditions plan, there's a general outline of the tree area going around the perimeter of the property.
yeah, that would just be it could be the more mature tree or scrub, it could be a mix,
My
whatever.
question is, there's also 7, I think, trees that are actually shown as individual trees. And I was wondering whether those trees were shown because there's something special about them. Are they larger than the other trees that are in the, and maybe, are you showing trees above a certain DBH? Or why are those 7? Because all those trees are on the southern part of the property.
Yeah.
And none of them on the northern.
I think, well, the reason that they're shown separately is because that's lawn area. It'd be, just specific trees within a lawn area. If there's a brush line, typically on with the survey, if there's a brush line, they go to the brush line. And so that that, tree line or brush line, they don't typically go back in and get specimen trees or larger trees.
So there is one tree though that's well within that line. And it actually looks like it's gonna be a budding property, the High Street.
Yeah, I'm not sure he picked up on it.
So I was just wondering.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that these trees aren't necessarily any bigger than the trees?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just that it's in an open lawn area, so they'll pick up, they'll pick the trees up. If it's open lawn, there's a tree, they'll pick it up. If there's a thick, if there's a brush line, they typically just grab the limit of the brush line is sort of standard operating procedure as far as the survey goes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna speak to, can we go to, 6, slide 6, please.
Sorry, what was, I don't know if they're-
That's the meeting. So just to give you guys an idea of my experience in Newburyport, I too care about Newburyport. I grew up here, lived here my whole life, graduated school here. I've done a number of projects around here. When we analyze something like this to come on, I don't just go in, I didn't go here, look on Google, look for a piece of land, make the neighbors mad. That's not how it works. So overall plan for this, I think is a good idea. Is there's a project that I did that literally other side of this drive. And so I do like to go in here, have land area. This is land use, planning land use, have land area, right? And then people build, buy a lot and build themselves their custom home. Okay. So in doing that, Andy, can you just kind of zoom in on any of them, pick one. The easiest one. In doing that, looking at these like dotted lines and blocks, so that like the colored ones, everyone's talking about the house. What that represents is the greatest area you can cover on that block. That doesn't represent the house, what it looks like or anything like that. So what it is you're allowed to cover up to 25% of the lot. Okay, so that's the maximum foot. You cannot go any bigger than that. Is it gonna get that big? But you can't get any bigger, you know what I mean? So then beyond that line, there's dashed lines all the way around that. So those are the setbacks. This is all designed to R2. This neighborhood is zoned as R2. Everything on Lincoln Street is non-conforming. We have to live in the world. It's basically geometry. So we did really analyze putting that road on the other side. That's the first thing we did. And what happens is when you come up that hill, you're dealing with not only the cut, you're dealing with all these remnants of land, and your yield comes way down because everything's like I need 80 feet of frontage. And then we also have to design these blocks that fit. So like these are all design parameters to get to this. So when you're looking at these things, this does not represent, that basically tells the public and the board, this is my maximum size. These all meet zoning. So this is the zoning requirement. So in the planning, we go through requirements, which is land use, right? So this is a land use. We need to represent that we're meeting all our parameters, checking all the boxes of these things. Ideally, I don't build junk. I build really nice things, and I want people to be very happy with what they get. In a perfect world, I too would like to build $400,000 homes. Trust me, I would. It's gone out of control. First started doing it was probably a third. But the realistic economics of this project is this building is going to be developed. It's not going to be a mess. It's over. This thing is going to be sitting there, losing tenants. I'm trying to relocate the existing acupuncturist and a pediatrician. I'm trying to find them somewhere else to go because this thing is going to be a dilapidated waste eventually. And this existing like this is over. We worked really hard to try to get that Israel to stay there. In a perfect world, I'd rather keep them. This isn't fun. Let's keep them there. But the reality is, they're going, we gotta put something in there. We analyze this. I could have gone other ways to get bigger, nastier yields if I wanted, you know, the good old developer, I'll throw 40B in here, jam it all up, and no one says it. I don't do that. That's the reality. We put a lot of thought into this. We analyze the best use. I worry about what it's gonna look like and stuff. I've done quite a few things around here. And I'm one of the few people when it comes to the board and say they're gonna do something, it gets done. Don't screw around, make everything worse. You know, but the reality is there's a financial burden. Building this road is very expensive. You know. So when we build something like this, there's massive, massive risk. This could still quite frankly go to funds. Get rolled in, nobody buys the houses. We go all broke, me and Shane live in a trailer park somewhere. But the reality is, this is, you know, this isn't, you know, just bastardizing areas. You know, I understand, I would be concerned too if something like this is happening because people don't like change. I get it. I'm in the change business. I'm a little bit, deal with it more. And also, when we go through, you know, Steve's like, oh, cut this and do that. Well, you know, when I'm in there, I'm like, geez, this is really nice. We save this. But when we're at this point, we're not going to build these shit. So I can't invest hundreds of thousands of dollars of other engineers to go through and do this and do that. And then next thing you know, you guys can't do that. And what is that? So, you know, we go in, anyone around here, neighbors over there, ask neighbors out down. When I come in, generally it goes really well. You know, I want to make sure because reality is I ain't going anywhere. I'm gonna be here forever. I'm not my kids in high school. I'm not going anywhere. I'm in grade years, so I'm not gonna just put some junk out there and run away. Every vine sided piece of crap. So I mean, I don't know if that addresses anything or not. Yeah, any questions?
Thank you, Jay. I think we're gonna have a discussion among the board. Rich just told me to say that. And we'll itemize the issue. Who wants to start?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious is where we are in continuance is that applicant is self-acknowledged, they want to relook at some things, in particular, I hear the buffer, things like that. So I think just from a logistics standpoint, I think we're okay to continuance and should start thinking that way, but maybe I'll wait and see what we're thinking about more specific comments.
So one of the things we had when we looked at the development that's buffered in Merrimack was, well, we had two things. We had architectural plans, which I understand we don't know what the architecture is at this point, but we also did landscape. I think that would be very helpful to have a sense of what the proposed landscaping is going to be for this. There's what the landscaping is going to be along Highland Ave, and what landscaping will be proposed along the lane. So we get a sense that where trees are going to be. When we did the Doyle Drive project, we had a lot of information about where trees were going to be and what the landscaping was going to be like. So I think that would be very helpful to understand that. Also, related to that, and following up on my question to Steve earlier, I would like to have more information about the existing conditions of trees. It's been referred to as scrub. Some of the neighbors talk about older trees that provide, benefits. So I guess I would like to know, I'm not sure what the cutoff is, but maybe have mapping of where some type of level of significance for each DBI. I'm not sure, what would you think? Just to have, so we obviously don't want to, every little sapling. But we have some significant trees in this buffer going away, so we can know what is necessary.
Sometimes I would get the call, but anything above 6 inches.
That'd be useful. Yeah. So I would kind of leave that up to planning versus, Steve, in terms of what we show.
I think what may be helpful too is some photos of different angles of the trees, not just from the site, but from outside looking in, because we're doing a lot, we'll look on plans, it's a top view, but it doesn't give you the flavor of it. I mean, we can certainly go out there individually and look at it and show, we all will know in this group, but it'd be, be helpful to know, okay, this is the angle, and this is the thing, nothing architecturally doesn't have to be beautiful, we're not making a production, we're just trying to get a sense of what what it looks like.
A photo array. Photo array.
Yes.
And kind of related to that, we've already talked about trying to maybe pull back some of the drainage structures from the edge of the property line. That's something I'd like to have considered. Limit the impact on the butters. One of the things that I didn't catch until I was looking here this evening was, there are fences shown on the proposed plans, and on the south side it's shown as a vinyl fence, north side it's shown as a wood fence. It doesn't show where the wood changes to vinyl. So maybe there's a place where you could, I can't tell whether the fence backing up against 253 High Street, for example, is vinyl or wood. It's not really clear, I don't think, unless I'm missing the notation in the plan. But it would be helpful to know what is being proposed there. And I guess for Andy, a question for Andy. This, the plan that's titled the site layout plan, which is the plan that shows the conceptual footprints of the houses.
Yep.
Is that something that we're approving, or is that something that is?
The creation of the lot, you mean?
No, I mean, we've got a plan showing house footprints.
Oh, yes. So that's a great sort of on-point question for the discussion tonight, right? So, effectively, the board here would be approving the sort of reduced or revised, whatever degree, roadway, standard there. But those essentially would become on the zoning, lots that, with those setbacks displayed here are as right lots from there for permitting. So if there's a discussion about what goes on there, this would be the time for the board to look at those pieces. At that point, if they're broken off, if there's a roadway created, you go through this permit process. They're then lots that they would go to the normal process for plan review by the zoning administrator, the building commissioner, for compliance with zoning, presumably ask for right plans and those are things that need special needs variances from the CBA board. But here, if there's a concern about looking at that detail, because it's a discretionary special permit, that would be the time to look at it. If this is approved here, then it's typically, this is almost looking at like a regular subdivision, the roadway is approved, and all the lots that happen after that are built individually through the zoning that normally happens in those lots.
Right, so I guess what I'm saying, my question is, I understand the definitive subdivision plan, which shows those buildable areas.
Yeah.
But the next plan is a plan that actually shows buildings. And are we approving those buildings?
Yeah, no, however, to your point, and I guess to remove ambiguity, the type of ambiguities that I've seen over the years, right, questions, things like that, I think it would be good to clarify one or the other goes. So, the way that this can essentially mechanically work is the board can approve the roadway layout and leave those as right lots and allow the flexibility, as Jay was alluding to in the presentation, that within the envelope that's allowed, the developer can propose individual homes after that in those lots. However, it should probably, to your question, maybe to clarify, it probably should be clarified one or the other, the degree to which you want to solidify or incorporate any parameters for those lots about the way that the homes are placed or, vegetation screening, the things that that have been touched on tonight. Because absent codification of those things in the decision or looking at those areas now, those would then be the as right lots, the homes fit within the setbacks that are displayed there. Those envelopes that were mentioned earlier in the presentation, those would be permittable lots. It would not need to come to a discretionary board for review.
Then to follow up one more step, the special permit allows the creation of the lane. The next step is a subdivision plan that allows the creation of the lot. Can the special permit include conditions that would affect the setbacks in the lot?
Yes, the way that I read this is, and again, it's tangential or indirect, But by way of granting some relief for the roadway design or indoor construction standards, right, whatever sort of makes this lab work, if you will. The board then has the ability to look at during the permitting process if it so wishes, further detail relative to those things. And therefore, sort of from a sequential perspective, addressing to the best, of anybody's ability or interest, through the special permit process, those areas of concern. They're enabled or created by the, roadway approval. And then the subdivision approval, showing just essentially for the purpose of, all the practical purposes, just the construction of this, and everything involved there. And then after that, when the homes are permitted from there, they would have to comply, even though they might otherwise comply with zoning, they would have to comply with what parameters you have as a board place. So if it had, say, the equivalent of almost saying, the default zoning setback is 25 feet in the rear yard, but we are requiring here based on context it to be 30 feet because we worked out some, so it would be good to codify or clarify what those pieces are. If there's anything essential to call out for those lots as a distinguished from the roadway component, which is sort of the baseline of this permit process.
So in a sense, the special permit for the lane kind of operates in the same way as, although it's not at all the same type of development, it kind of operates in the same way as open space residential development.
It's a degree, yeah, the way we're talking about, yeah, for this purpose, yes. Yeah, it doesn't have the open space set aside required and things like that, right? But it does have that same sort of ability for the board to look at those details, just like in the open space subdivision, one that Colby Farm Lane, that Doyle Drive, that folks might know, a more recent one. That one is one where the board have said we're approving lots and look at the house lots and things in detail of sometimes when a whole house or development is a little bit tighter, it makes more sense to even look at those details. And we've seen over the boards look at those types of details a little bit more over the years than just the standard subdivision where, the west end of the city on the other side of I-95 years ago, huge lot, are shown on plans long ago, and each lot is built out individually. Nowadays, particularly since a lot of things are usually coming into infill somewhere or redevelopment, there tends to be a little bit more interest in looking at those details on the lots themselves in association with a bulk, if you will. This is a small relative number of houses or lots, but bulk creation of lots in an area.
So I'm sorry to slow this down just a little bit, so I'm crystal clear. One of the things on the table, and there probably will be more conditions, but are buffers, preserve trees, something like that. So where would that specifically, would that be on the special permit for the lane or on the subdivision?
Yeah, I would suggest, generally speaking, that should be in the special permit. And so the subdivision plan might reflect a lot of those same details. It wouldn't necessarily need to cover the same, all those same areas, but the plan sets essentially with the same set because of course we don't have any inconsistencies, right? So at the end of the day, those type of details, however, would be covered by the special permit. Rather than per se in the written decision for the subdivision, which is going to speak primarily to the roadway parameters. Yes.
I support the comments that Rick made and looking for more information about the trees and the buffer and so forth. But I also would like to see more detail on the actual cut. As far as just make sure that any retaining walls.
Okay. Well, I think I got a couple more. Well, when we come back with another revised plan, I want to make sure that plans include the existing easements, for example, the easement at 11 Arlington and the proposed easements for drainage structures and how that's going to be run, maybe we already have an operation in maintenance, so maybe how that easement relates to those easements, I guess. And because those are all on lot 4, I think. And more information about the driveway. And we talked about the planning plan. Did you want to follow up on your sidewalk question?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see just in the plan what that would look like. I mean, I know it's not the most favorite thing, but I'd like to see what it visually would look like. Okay. What would be the impact? Okay. Fair. You can do it as an alternating, I mean, I like actually.
A nice upright curve, concrete walkway.
We should ask them.
Good question for you guys is, would you like to come back? Next meeting.
So,
We meet 2 weeks from now?
Yeah.
yeah,
What's the?
it's the seventh.
Would be
Yeah, the
just
seventh
January
of
7th.
January would be the next, potentially viable, I think, realistically, so. You wanna aim for that one?
Yeah.
Sure.
So normally we would expect materials in no later than a week before that meeting, so board members are looking for that, obviously, the general public, that's when we're at 31st of December is when we're expecting those things to be uploaded.
You're not doing anything with the holidays, right?
It's not now.
Well, in that case, I guess I'll ask for a motion.
I would, oh, go ahead.
I'll move to continue the special permit application and definitive subdivision approval application for 18 Highland Avenue to January 7th of 2026.
I second. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are,
My first act in Congress was being called into the vice chair. Just one thing to listen. It's another thing to do. All right, speaking of which, it's Kyle here. Actually, wait, no, I guess we're gonna try to approve some minutes tonight. The minutes of 8:20, not available, are not available. The minutes of, sorry, okay. The minutes of 11/13/2025 and the minutes of, we have to do them separately.
You can make one motion.
well, I wasn't.
It's more.
I wasn't here for the
Then you shoot
13th.
it up.
Okay, we'll do a second. So, I would need a motion to approve the minutes of 11/13/2025. Everyone can,
As a matter.
And
as amended, sorry. There we go. I believe Rick is abstaining, but there's enough of us here too.
I'm abstaining from the 13th.
Oh, you are too? That, we're still, but, and the associates can also vote, so. I need a motion for that.
I'll move to approve the minutes of 11/15/2025 as amended.
Okay, all in favor?
I wasn't there when
Oh, you were abstaining as well?
Okay.
Okay, so there's
Four votes, so can we do that?
four votes. We will carry that vote to the next agenda.
This is why we always try to like, few people missing as, as possible, like, juggle which.
Andy's voting. Moving on to the meetings of 11/19/2025. We have a motion to approve those. It's as amended.
As amended.
Second.
Unanimous.
I did everyone's name that was spelled. I tried hard, but I was like,
You
how
spelled
do
it, Nate.
I did, I spelled it.
Right, the big motion to adjourn.
I spent time on lots of things, so I'm happy to give updates. I did actually just did nothing else. I did want to give a special thanks to Brian for helping to close a loop technically tonight where we ran into a snag. And he was very helpful in enabling us to show on the screen the visuals.
What actually
But I have to say, without Caitlin and Jamie, we'd still be doing.
Thank you for the
Look at that.
And as far as.
What happened with it?
I cannot tell you, you guys be writing before about the stuff here. This actually has nothing to do with the center of the program. In this case, they forced me to get a new laptop. My laptop was probably very fine, but they made so many IT changes recently that they got a new one for me. But the IT director failed to pick up on the fact the new laptop, while being nice and small and maneuverable, does not have an HDMI port. Knowing that so many discussions about how important is all these meetings that we run, So I was just incidentally having, oddly enough, our second, he just happened to be here at the book. I was having an exchange with him, and I was like, he could have gotten me with the computer, like the adapter. So I was expecting to just plug into this thing in the back, like I normally do, and there's literally no HDMI port. I have to get an adapter now, exterior, to make a connection when I go to every room. So again, nonsensical stuff that sometimes happens, I have to. Anyway, that's a good fix. Yeah. No, I mean, CJ is looking at Kmart next week. You might want to attend that or all that. It's ostensibly, as far as we understand, the last meeting that they're going to have. So they'll probably discuss conditions, anything further from there going into January.
Did they come up with anything new to respond to all the comments from last time?
They did upload just upload some additional revised materials. I would say it's substantially different. Look at that further, but they have uploaded new materials for the board to look at going into this meeting.
And when you say the last meeting, then you said something about January.
Sorry, I'm referring here from after, assuming the closure of the hearing next week, based on the information provided on the documentation there, no new information coming in, the board then having 40 days to make a written decision. So having a couple of meetings, and they may actually have another meeting, I think the following week in December, we're trying to line up another meeting for them to start doing that discussion in December for the holidays. So
Next week will be final time for everybody.
that everybody should consider that unless the applicant last minute says, let's do it, continue it, or something like that. Now, yes, that's where everybody else should expect it. So if you recognizing, for instance, that the portion near Shaw is where the, nose in spaces and all that, whether those things are incorporated or not, whether you want to revisit that again, that's the time to, discuss those things. Equal thing. What is uploaded now, but we go, version that they, recently, that is the last version.
Specific updates?
Yeah, I think for the moment. I will be, we have a new council in January, so I think we'll have to, discuss. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned, accessory dwelling units. We had, should mention, we had a meeting last night, these meetings were together. Accessory dwelling units was discussed in city council meeting last night. Planning board provided a recommendation previously for adoption with, some, reviewed by council, legal council. That unfortunately, that one had not been closed, because of the relatively new area they use. I say relatively, sort of flexible use of the word relatively, but it's a little frustrating, and I know Rick is part of the people who are stressing details of this stuff, but I actually didn't want to follow the original. But there's been a lot of discussion recently, more recently, a letter came in from Jerry Heigerman, who's recently produced council. The language attorney, he expressed some concern about the way that ADUs are permitted in the setbacks, non-conformances that exist on the accessory structure, expressing concern about the way that it's permitted. Not somebody really wants to go explaining, all the idiosyncrasies and what the terminology and what's going on here. In essence, it's a question of what amount of review and or process can be required by the board versus the sort of as of right use, adaptive reuse of those pre-existing structures that are be closer to a lot line or not necessarily even the new ones that someone's proposing. Those would have to adhere to zoning and setbacks, generally speaking, that's a separate, but even just the question of if somebody has a structure there, he's arguing that you just have to go to the board, the ZBA in this case, to determine that it's not a detriment to the neighborhood, to then make it adaptive reuse,
Change the use, but
well, yeah, and I guess from my perspective, I think that's actually one of the salient questions is it a change of use? And the reason I say that is because the legislature made it an accessory to the underlying residential use, ADUs. They can't sell them off as a separate use, so, and also they're protected, use, and above that, they're government. So the idea that that could essentially be a change of use is something that I think is still a question. Making the argument that if nobody is making a physical change to that structure, the state has said through its regulations, as long as that structure meets state building codes and health codes and whatnot, the city or sort of
water, sewer,
small
farms, egress. I mean, there's a lot to that.
Right. There is a discussion essentially going on about this sort of spectrum, about going through the rabbit hole of 40A zoning and all the terms and all that. But there's a gradation, and Rick maybe you with some of this, but this is really a parallel to the discussion we had the first time. It was really a suggestion being made at Gates that at the time this year ago, or year we started, was right before the state of our the state was adopting their regs. So we're kind of trying to do a parallel to state where they're heading. But there was an argument essentially being presented at that time to do a special permit for the ADUs. We could see the state was getting special permits for a while. But what was being proposed was essentially initially a special permit masquerading as approval. Yeah. And in this case, what we have in a way right now is still a continuation of that same discussion. It's sort of an argument of, well, there really should be at least a board review of some kind. In this case, the discussion might go to something like what we call a finding, a section 6 finding under 40A, which is that it's not as detrimental, it's not necessarily a detriment to the neighborhood to have it, but it's also not necessarily a discretionary special permit process. The reason I think that's still a potential issue at the end of the day for all practical purposes, and recognize that everybody thought to this is having worked in this field, is my concern, I guess, there part of nothing else is when it might be perceived as providing some additional, review process or, sort of benefit there. I think it sort of unfortunately gives the impression to perhaps to the ZBA members and to the general public that can be treated like a discretionary special permit where you can sort of come up with special conditions on the fly, or make up in given context what's the requirement going to be, or perhaps deny or withhold the finding the approval. I think there'd be in most cases where that structure is already there, it's been pre-existing in whatever proximity. I think the case law here, it's going to be seen in the future, but I think where the case law is going to head is it's going to be it's almost like a 40B where the ZBA or the board there would be hard pressed to come up with a reason why it was a detriment to the neighborhood, given that the structure is already there, to make adaptive reuse of it as an accessory dwelling. But the state basically said, allow these things in a streamlined process, and then kind of this ground in the regulations. So I'm not convinced, and I think we have to find out, we're getting more input on this, the degree to which it's an actual change of use from the underlying, given that it's
It could be an old barn lean-to that's about to fall apart, it's a
Right.
structure.
right.
And then all of a sudden, you're gonna cut out all the trees, you're gonna build this, you're gonna save a wall and build a structure. It's totally different. There's lighting, there's all those things. It's like, you'd hate to, I get the partial, or it's not a yes or no, it's a conformance.
Yeah, I think the main thing, the main distinction here that seems to be, or one of them that seems to come into play is if somebody's making or doesn't need to make any fiscal alterations whatsoever, is that something that goes to the board for review or needs to have a review in that
I'm just
context?
on the administrator.
And if, in the sense, if it's not a special permit, it can't be a special permit there necessarily. If it's done as a so-called finding review, I'm not convinced that's going to deliver what some folks may think that delivers. It might give people the impression that the full public hearing being, happening on it, for butters to say, we want this, we want to modify on this one. And the board won't even necessarily be in a position to do that, and will be on the other end of the table, essentially saying, we have to come up with a rationale why this is actually not, is a detriment to the neighborhood to allow them to use the structure that's already there. The accessory dwelling unit, in the context of the regulations, the language and the regulations of the state, I'm not convinced that's going to be, a strong argument, prevailing argument per se. But finding perhaps might be something that is utilized in the practice here, but I don't know if that's actually going to provide the same benefit that some folks may think it does. And it may also actually unfortunately confuse people through essentially sounding like it's, just an administrative sort of thing. People, but then sounding like a restriction permit and mixing and matching and getting into this, basically you're being, or in this case, the DBA being in the room and feeling like they're having a hearing on something and not necessarily having worked that way legally. So
Not even having an opportunity to comment, right? Because it's not a hearing.
well, and I could see there being some folks, perhaps there's ambiguity there, but there could even be sort of attempts to make that more formalized. And I think that would be also additionally confusing because it makes it seem more like it's a public hearing.
Yeah,
But in reality, it's just a finding and it's not a special permit hearing.
Yeah.
So I think it's going in that exact same direction. It's just that it was sort of, at least since then, there's been some maybe acknowledgement that it can't be really a special permit. It can't be a special asking a site plan review, but can it be a finding? And then you're down to the question, is a finding going to be, still being approached as a special permit? And will that become problematic?
So where are the changes now? Are they?
Yeah, sorry.
And I guess my question is, there something we should do more to clarify?
Yeah. Ambiguities, you sorry?
You said that there's some, it's a gray area.
Yeah.
Can we get rid of that?
Yeah, we reached out to legal counsel because we were spending time yesterday. I will push out to the updated version that we were working on committee last night and a memo I sent to the council today. Now just to kind of set it up, get a chance to do that today when it's it noted in there is that part of what we got back was some confusing or mixed information from council on this same area. And I'll just say as a planner myself, with respect to all the attorneys up there, and recognizing it's a difficult situation based on we have limited language and staff and the legislature and staff. But to be where we are at this point, this far out from the regulations from the Commonwealth, and to still have the attorneys, or at least to some degree, you still have that much ambiguity per se about the handling of some of these pieces of it. That's frustrating to me because I actually feel like in some cases it's a little more clear to me as we look at what we might, need to do where we fall. And continually go around in circles in some cases is frustrating. So I have been pressing some of the counselors have been pressing, saying, we really need to have better, legal clarity in this area. And so unfortunately, even though we've asked, we've got some attention, in some ways on this. I'm not 100% clarity that's able to be given. Some of it, in fairness to the attorneys, is not their fault. That's because of the statutory language in particular and partly the regulations. But I think, unfortunately, some of that's just because people keep sort of debating, and I frankly don't think that should be as much of a debate when we get into it.
So I wasn't, this board.
This board voted to recommend it as amended committee. However, there was a recognition of legal counsel review, and there was recognition that there was still some further review of what was essentially part 2 of Jerry's letter, which was the first part being the use of the term dwelling unit versus dwelling, and then the other was structure versus unit and all that, but and then maybe I'm not issuing the language now, but but the part two was more of a substantive, was this question, and it was understanding of, well, if it's a pre-existing non-conforming structure that's there, the argument is, well, another section of the zoning act that wasn't reconciled, in, let's say, for lack of a better term, wasn't 100% unambiguously reconciled by the legislature to make it clear whether, some sort of procedure like finding had to be done by the ZBA or could be done by the ZBA. Now the suggestion is being made that perhaps they should do that process. What was presented was essentially as alternative language going to the last meeting. It was essentially a special permit review by the ZBA in those instances, and staff, and at least in our office, we're saying we're not convinced that that's consistent with the state guidance. That's essentially a special permit, and it was essentially embedded in some convoluted language. So it was coming back to the same thing, essentially a special permit for something that DOHLC regulations suggest can't be done by a special permit. So we were trying to flag that as a potential problem, and we weren't able to get complete closure of legal counsel on the question there. So we are now getting a little further feedback.
I guess one of the questions I would ask, is it possible to write the zoning to specifically say you? Regardless of whatever else is zoning, this is allowed as well.
It is 100% feasible to do so. I think the problem here is that we, for instance, the two sponsoring councilors seemed very interested in trying to accommodate the amendment that was being contemplated. Since you guys looked at 13, was a provision, and I pushed that language out to you as well, was a separate Word document. So you like that language was essentially sort of a substitution, but what you see in there, the sort of suggestion is essentially looping back again, almost like what's saying essentially, well, if you're going to make adaptive reuse of those structures, do you have any sort of non-conformance? Maybe even if you're not doing anything structurally changing, you still have to go to ZBA for review for something. And so we're back to the degree to which the board needs to review it versus is it truly as of right for an accessory dwelling unit and deferring just to the default zoning that's on the books. If the board is has to do a procedure of some type, even if we try to clarify what that process is, it's still very simple to understand the degree to which that can have some conditions, description, and that I think is the problematic area of it's coming about here. That's being sort of mixed and matched, and there's essentially a policy disagreement in Jerry's letter with the executive community saying they're not correct in their regulations, they're overreaching their authority. Essentially, is what Jerry's letter says. They're overreaching their authority in part 2 of his letter because they don't acknowledge that you can do a special permit for this process. So, in any rate, that because that question was raised since your last meeting, that is now rolling around again. Legal counsel and the sponsoring counsel facilitate or address part of that by sending some of these things to the ZBA review. So we're not trying to sort of get that in there. If so,
It's subtle in there.
You both. And I know not all of you are as interested in all the minutia. And I appreciate it.
Not as frustrated as people are slog in town. It's ridiculous.
it makes our company close the loop on something. I have nothing else to make.
Worried about stages to it, they'll let you know at some point. Yeah, should we go around this forever? You know? Someone's gonna be.
I'm not offering anything more. I'm so David's suggestion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to, he's first, and second. I'll second.
All in favor? Yeah, you did.
That's right.